नमस्ते बच्चों। आज मैं आप लोगों को बताने जा रही हूँ ह्यूमन सर्कुलेटरी सिस्टम।
So human heart, as you all know, it is a four-chamber heart. Okay, like these are basically two atria, and below of that is ventricle. So ventricles are larger than the atria basically. So these are upper chambers which are known as atria, and these are lower chambers which are known as the ventricles. एट्रियम सिंगुलर यूज़ करते हैं और एट्रिया जो यूज़ करते हैं वो प्लूरल में यूज़ करते हैं. सो देर आर बेसिकली टू एट्रियम, one on the right side and another one on the left side. Please look at this. This one is the right atrium. This one is the left atrium. Left part of heart is always associated with the pure blood. This is left ventricle. This is right ventricle. So there are four chambers in human heart. Now these both atrium are separated by each other by a very thin interatrial septum. Okay, and the another septum which is present between the two ventricle, it is known as interventricular septum. It is slightly thicker than the interatrial septum. Interatrial septum is thin, but interventricular septum is thick. Now there is a fibrous tissue or the thick fibrous tissue which is also present between the atrium and the ventricle, and they are also separating these atrium to the ventricle, and these type of septum is known as, because these are present between the atrium and the ventricle, so these are known as interatrioventricular septum. Okay, but there are some opening which will allow the blood flow from the atrium to the ventricle. The blood will flow from the right atrium to the right ventricle, and also from the left atrium to the left ventricle through these openings, and these openings are called as wall. The wall which is present between the left atrium and the left ventricle, it is a mitral valve, or the also known as bicuspid wall, because it has two cusps. And the valve which is present between the right atrium and the right ventricle, this valve is known as tricuspid valve, as it is present between the right atrium and the right ventricle. It can be known as right atrioventricular valve. So this is right atrioventricular valve. Function of valve is they will always provide the unidirectional flow of blood from the atrium to ventricle. The blood will not go back into the atrium. Fine. Now the next thing is what? The specialized cardiac musculature, which is called nodal tissue. This nodal tissue is present in heart. Okay. Some part of this is present here, which is basically upper right corner of the right atrium, where the superior vena cava will be opened, is known as sinoatrial node. This is basically SAN. This is very important. It is auto-excitable and it is also known as pacemaker of heart. Okay? This is also known as a pacemaker of heart. Why? Because we will study later on. Then after, some tissue of some nodal tissue are also present at the lower left corner of the right atrium, and this tissue is known as basically atrioventricular node or AV node. Fine. Now the next other nodal fibers, like some fibers which will come from this AV node and then they will passing through this atrioventricular septum and then they will reach the interventricular septum. This type of fiber which are coming from the atrioventricular node and they emerge on the top of the interventricular septum, which are coming from here. So these bundle are known as atrioventricular bundle. Okay. So these atrioventricular bundle basically coming from this atrioventricular node, passing through this interatrioventricular septum, and then they will emerge on the top of the interventricular septum and will divide into two parts. One is the right and another one on the left side. The one on the right side and other one on the left side, and these bundles are known as bundle of His. HIS. This bundle of His will give the number of minute fibers which will spread all over this ventricles, and these network of small fiber is known as Purkinje fibers. This is Purkinje fibers. Fine. So this is SA and sinoatrial node. This is atrioventricular node, or we can say AV node, another mass of nodal tissue. This is atrioventricular bundle, then atrioventricular bundle, further then there will be bundle of His, and then bundle of His will give the number of minute fibers which are known as the Purkinje fibers. Fine.